This episode of Fuel for the Soul is powered by ASICS. Head over to asics.com and sign up for a one ASICS account. It's completely free, and when you sign up, you'll receive 10% off your first purchase. You'll also gain access to exclusive colorways on asics.com, free standard shipping, special birthday month discounts, and more.
Hi, this is Thomas with Believe in the Run.
This is Meghann with Believe in the Run.
And this is Meghann with Featherstone Nutrition.
Okay, do I even have to say it anymore? We've been doing this now for a couple of years.
Let's see your new
feathers.
tat.
Yeah, let's see we even got
it's
a new
covered
branding
with
piece
plastic
on her.
still. It's kind of shiny. There, you can kind of see it better.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening who can't see it, Feathers marked herself for life with a new tattoo that looks like I would say it looks like an arrow, but it's not, because it's more like almost like what do you call those things that you can measure like straight down, like you hold and it's like a plum or something they call it.
Well, it's supposed to be an arrow with a feather on the end, so I don't know what you're saying.
Okay. It looks like that, but it's with one feather. It doesn't look like your traditional arrow.
Yeah, right. No. It's, got some artistic liberty.
I like it because you can point it the direction you want to go.
Yeah.
And when you if you did that,
way.
Yeah.
And if you did the Usain Bolt thing where he shoots an arrow, you have it back there already.
Yeah, you're gonna have to think of some new mid-race photo moves you can get, and like finish line. Yeah, you're gonna have to work on that. So think about it.
Yeah. I also think that you should do a Feathers to Nutrition T-shirt with long sleeve with it printed on
that'd be cool.
on the sleeve.
That would be cool. Like on the sleeve on the same place, so like everyone can have the same tattoo.
Yeah.
Everybody can have it. Yeah.
It's not vain or anything.
I love it. I think
hey, everybody.
Support it.
Who wants to be like me?
Oh my goodness.
No, I do still like that. I like that idea.
I do too. Okay, you are listening to Fuel for the Soul, the podcast where we chat all things hydration and nutrition and how it affects performance. And today we're going to talk all about injuries and how to come back from them and prevent them and all that good stuff. But before we do, we want to chat about our sponsor, Runway, who is not only sponsoring this episode, but all of our episodes in 2025.
We're pretty excited about this. Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, they're in it to win it.
I mean, I do want to tell people, like, when we take on a sponsor like this, it's not lightly, and I've been using the product. I know that Feathers has been using the product quite a bit for, I guess it's
been over a year. It's been over a year.
We met him in New York. Started with the collagen drink mix.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because when we went to Orlando, I think it's the first time I met Cam in person.
Yeah.
And I'd already been using it for a while. That was last February. And now I've been using the protein with the creatine.
Yeah. So, we talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of carbs and how we need to scale up carbs for our performance. And I think, we make that pretty clear. But we also know that our friends over at Runway have a product for us that Thomas was just talking about, which is their complete protein. So it has 23 grams of protein per serving, so you can scale that up if you need to, and it contains creatine, which we have a full episode on as well, and we're realizing that might actually be something that we need as runners as well.
Well, yeah, and we've added in, and I think a lot of runners are doing this now, are adding in a weight routine or some strength training to their efforts, to stay healthy. We're going to talk about injury, and I really feel like that's a big plus, is having that creatine in there for workouts and that protein for muscle building. So it's not just for running, but you can use it if you're doing other activities as well.
And I actually didn't know this. This is in their notes to us, but this is a vegan protein that's made from fermented nutritional yeast, which is derived from a byproduct of the beer industry. So that's interesting. And so it uses less land and less water and whey than the usual vegan protein. And in studies, it's been shown to be just as effective as whey-based protein for building muscle.
But that's with an additive, right? The leucine or something, isn't it?
So that's the cool thing, right? That's the cool thing about this vegan protein is most vegan protein powders are deficient in leucine, which is our trigger to actually stimulate our muscles to recover and grow and rebuild. But this fermented nutritional yeast is just naturally higher in leucine. And to my knowledge, this is the only vegan protein powder that's made from this fermented nutritional yeast. And don't worry, it doesn't taste like beer and it doesn't taste fermented by any means. I think it's actually quite delicious. Yeah.
If you guys haven't yet and you want to go try it, you can go to runway.life. So that's RNWY.life. And then use the code feathers15 for 15% off your first order.
Good world, folks.
Here we are to talk about not the most fun topic, but a very important topic, as almost everyone, I mean, maybe I can say everyone who is a runner and has been a runner for years has experienced some sort of injury in their running. So, Meghann, this is very fresh in your mind. Talk to us about what's happening and what we're going to go over today.
So first and foremost, I was curious, like, is there research on how often runners get injured? And it looks like over 50% of runners get injured on a yearly basis. Like out of the whole pool of runners, like half of us have something that side lines our training at some point, whether it's just a week or two, or whether it's like a big injury, like it wasn't differentiated. But I mean, we know running's a tough sport on our body.
Yeah.
And
what constitutes an injury? What like when we talk about injury, because like I think all of us get like
niggles.
Yeah, there's you wake up, like I woke up this morning and I was like, my body feels a little beat up, and then you start running, you feel fine, but like I think that there's that fine line between, hey, you can continue your training, and hey, you should maybe pull back or get an X-ray or something.
Well, and I think that's the hardest part. Is like, when do you know when to push and when do you actually pull back when it comes to pain or discomfort? And I think a lot of us are kind of in that boat because, like you said, when you're in a training block, like things don't feel wonderful. Like things feel creaky. Things hurt when you get out of bed in the morning. Like you said, sometimes things feel better as you start to run. Sometimes things feel worse. And it's like, what do you react to? What do you go seek help for? What do you shut it down for? I think that's something that we would all love to have like the perfect answer for. And I'm not sure that we actually know this. And it was really interesting this morning. So this was like, 4 hours ago, I put a poll on my Instagram stories, just asking like, hey, how many of you have been injured, in the past 5 years? 92% of people have said yes so far. So, I mean, That was like, I think 1,500 people had answered it when I logged on here. So, I mean, like, that's nuts, right? Like, I think we've done 1 or 2 podcasts on injuries, but I'm not sure we've actually given them quite their due diligence on here.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of us really want to talk about injuries. We don't want to talk about the fact that we can't do what we love to do, myself included.
It's scary.
Segue. Yeah, right?
But before we get into that, is there any, when people talk about, there's kind of different injuries, and I always get this one confused. It's kind of like fever, cold, whatever. I forget which one you're supposed to do when you have a cold. But when we talk about, I remember my coach one time told me, if while you're running it doesn't hurt, then you can continue running. But if it hurts while you're running, you should stop. Is that right? I
think it's so, like,
so
you can't
hard.
even say that statement, like that blank statement, just because there's so many factors involved. It depends on if it's like a tendon or a bone or it's just, there's so many. I don't think you can say, hey, if it's like so this, hard. Do this.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's so hard.
I'm looking for the cheat code.
Yeah.
Right? I think we all are. And I think that's why, it's so hard to try to figure out what this looks like. So, after Berlin, I ran a great race there, and I felt better than I've ever felt after any race. I didn't feel beat up. I felt great. I was like super stoked to get back to training and run New York City. So started back, I don't know, maybe 5 days off. And I was like, Meg, I feel great. Let's train, and got back to it and still felt good. And I was having some back pain that I started to go see my sports chiropractor for. He thought it was like a disc issue. And same thing. He told me, he's like, if your pain is a 4 out of 10 or less, run. Right. So, I mean, like, I guess that's something out there in the, community. So I was like, oh, well, it hurts a little bit. But as Thomas said, I'm like, it feels better when I keep running. And it kind of hurts when I get up. It kind of hurts when I do certain things. But like, to our point, I think as runners, we learn to run through pain, which is probably not a great thing when we need to shut things down for injury, because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like my pain threshold, specifically when I'm running, is probably higher than it should be, because we've learned to push our bodies like crazy through marathons. And also, probably, I can only speak for myself, but I have like crazy endorphins when I run. So I think it kind of minimizes the pain. And then after you stop, you're like, oh my gosh, wait, something actually hurts, right? So it's like, I think it's really hard to have that judgment call, like in the middle of a run, in the middle of a race of like, do I stop? Do I keep going? So that was kind of the situation I was in building back to New York City. You know, and he kept saying, oh, I think it's just a disc. I think it's just a disc. It was just like some low back pain. Really didn't think anything of it, honestly. The last long run I did, it was like I went to stand up off my front porch when I was done, and I was like, oh, something doesn't feel good there. You know, like this doesn't feel quite right. So I didn't run at all until our shakeout in New York City. And I was with Meg and I was like ready to cry. I was like, something's wrong. Like this really, really hurts, you know? So as you all know, didn't run New York City, kind of shut it down at that point, still had no clue what was going on. You know, it was being told that it was a disc issue and those things can resolve pretty quickly on their own. So like, you may just wake up one day and be okay was what I was told. So I kind of was just like, okay, you know, maybe I'll be okay. But again, like limping around New York City for the whole weekend. So then when I got back, I have a really good friend who's a physiatrist that works specifically with runners. She's a runner. Her husband's a runner. So I texted her and I was like, hey, like, this is what's going on. She's like, you need to come see me. So I immediately went in and saw her and she did some tests on me. And she immediately said, I think this is a sacral stress fracture. She said, this is exactly how they present. And I wasn't quite ready to hear anything about a bone injury because I've never had a bone injury. And I feel like I understand how bone injuries happen, and I felt like I was doing everything appropriately. You know, some of the risks for like a bone stress injury is like increasing running duration or intensity too quickly. I mean, you know, I've just kind of been hanging in the high 50s, maybe low 60 miles for like 2 years now with a little bit of time off in between. So like no big changes there. You know, other things like amenorrhea, not getting your period increases your risk of a bone injury. That is never something I've ever had. I get a very regular cycle, like hormones are totally fine. Not eating enough can be another sign of a bone injury. And I'm like, you know, kind of pride myself on the fact that I scale up nutrition and really make sure I'm supporting things from a timing perspective. So I'm clicking away all these things in my head and I'm like, this can't be a bone injury. Like I know what the risk factors are for it and I don't think I have any of them, right? So you know how it goes to wait for an MRI and it was, goodness, 3 weeks, maybe more before I could actually even get an MRI and then forever until the results were back. Sure enough, unfortunately, she was correct. So been sidelined a little bit here, in case you're wondering why I haven't been taking my front porch selfies. Thomas told me I should do them anyways, but
Yeah.
So
just kind of disappeared. Yeah.
Rewinding real quick to your last long run when you stood up and you realized that there was an issue. There was nothing out on the run that like you heard a pop or something and like all of a sudden it hurt. It was just like a gradual.
I think that's the crazy thing with bone injuries because it takes a little bit of experience almost, I think. Like now I kind of know after having a metatarsal break, I was running and I kept running on my foot and the foot hurt and I would massage it. I would go get massages. I was doing, you know, needle stuff. I'm like, why does my foot hurt so much? And I just kept running on it until during the Charleston Marathon in the last quarter mile, a lightning bolt hit me and a white flash went off. And I was, like you said, with the endorphins, I crossed the finish line. But as soon as I stepped over the finish line, I like blacked out and fell to the ground because of the pain in my foot. And I do think that as runners, when you have these goals, and yours was to run New York and to, you know, coming off of Berlin and, you know, I'm a little fatigued. I'm a little worked up. I can run through this. But now, you know, like if this was to happen again, or if you were to feel this thing, I think you'd be able to diagnose it a little bit faster. Now, mine was definitely due to increasing intensity quickly. And also at that time, it was during the minimalist shoe craze. And I was wearing all these shoes without any cushioning. So I was putting a tremendous amount of stress on my foot. But I can totally understand how you would like delay taking care of something and thinking that it might just go away, especially because the way that at least my bone presented as an aching more than a like a pain. It was just like a constant ache.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, now that, like I said, I've never broken a bone in my life, so like I didn't really understand like bone pain versus soft tissue pain versus like, like I think now maybe I can decipher it a little bit, but of course, you know me, I buried myself in any research there are on sacral stress fractures in runners, and there's not a ton of research in any research studies. It's like 4 or 5 people, because what I'm learning is they're very underreported because the pain is never where the injury was. Like I've never had pain in my sacrum. Like it's always referred either up to the lower back or out to the hip. So it's possible that like more people have these as runners and we just don't realize it, just because the presentation of this injury isn't quite as clear as maybe a foot stress fracture or a femoral
Why
stress
does it
fracture
shift?
or something like that.
Is there just not nerves in that area?
I have no clue. And, like you were saying, the weirdest thing was, like I said, like I felt amazing at Berlin, like no pain. So this happened in like 4 or 5 weeks between Berlin and New York City. And I've talked to doctors about that. And it's just wild to me that you can go from, and so they were thinking like, okay, it's probably just a stress reaction. It's like a full on stress fracture, right? Like we got some healing to do here. But it's just wild to me that our bodies can break down that quickly. And like
For
really,
those of
yeah.
For those of us who don't know where the sacrum is, can you
So it's
describe where that is?
It's like the very bottom of your spine. So I guess you could say it's part of your spine, or some people might think it's part of your pelvis. So like our spine,
Like your tail?
goes, yeah. The tailbone is the bottom of the sacrum. Absolutely. So it's almost a little bit like a heart-shaped bone that's at the very end of our spine. I think it's still part of our spine, but don't quote me on that. So it's like,
how do you get a fracture in that thing?
So that's the thing. Like that's what it takes, a lot of force, right, from there. So, I wish I had the answer of why do you get a fracture in there, because I'm searching for that answer. And in searching for that answer, like I want to share with everybody listening, like if you were in this situation, like what are some of the things, at least for me as a sports dietitian, like we need to make sure that we're checking the boxes of like, why did this happen? How do we prevent this from happening again? Are there things we need to be doing or changing? And what do those look like? So, because I think it can kind of drive us mad to be like, why did this happen?
Well, it's like,
we're looking for
it's
that
not
reason.
like, I understand the foot, you're pounding it against the ground. I could understand, even a thigh bone, or, the hip on the side, or something like your tail. Like what's
my
the
tail.
impact?
Sloane's running around telling all her friends, my mom's butt's broken. Don't bother my mom, her butt's broken. Like, thank you, Sloane. Is this the spine? She'll like smack my butt. I'm like, could you not?
Oh, jeez.
She's
Kids.
Ruthless.
Outside of obviously rest, did they tell you, here's what you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to speed up recovery as fast as possible?
That's a great question. So fast forwarding, and then we'll rewind at some point. But
okay.
All sides.
Megan's always trying to get as fast as possible.
Right.
Get me back working.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. So saving the allure, the end point. I've met with 4 different doctors now, and this is an overuse injury. Plain and simple. We can't find any other reason why this would have happened. 100% overuse, right? And that's what most of running injuries are. Yes, we were smart about volume and consistency and shoe wear and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, the things I've asked my body to do over the last 3 years, both in running and outside of running, being a mom of 2 young kids, running a business with myself and a part-time employee, running all these marathons, going to 4 different countries this year, like all of those things, it was just too much for my body and something had to give. And because my mind doesn't like to not do what my mind wants to do, I was pushing my body to do things that I probably shouldn't have continued to push it to, and I should have listened more and taken more downtime and taking more rest. And that's exactly how overuse injuries happen, right? Is when our mind drives our body to do things and our body is really trying to tell us we need to slow down and we're just not listening. So, that's to answer, Thomas's question is just overuse. My body needed a break. It was too much jarring on that specific area. And at some point, something's got to give.
To get to Megan's question about having it heal faster and what are the things, I know that they told you, and this is crazy to me because every once in a while when I'm having like a little bit of pain during like just general fatigue or whatever, I'll pop a couple Advils and then the next day I feel like whatever it was is gone.
Yeah.
And I feel fine. But you've been told, and I'm seeing, I actually forwarded you a story on Instagram about NSAIDs, which is Advil, and they block some of the healing in some of the things, and I didn't understand why, so I sent it to you.
Yeah.
And you told me that they said don't take Advil if you want your bones
They told
to
me
heal
any
faster.
type of NSAIDs will inhibit bone healing. So it would slow down the healing of the bone regrowth. So that's the biggest thing with any type of bone injury is our bone is broken, right? And every day we're kind of building up and breaking down muscle mass. And obviously bone mass. We want to build up and make new bone cells faster than we're breaking anything down, right? So it's like, to answer Meg's question, how do we maximize that building of new bone to repair that muscle and make it, or bone, and make it stronger, without prolonging the injury, right? So it's like, what is that sweet spot? So very interestingly enough, as soon as I saw my good friend, who was the one who actually was able to diagnose this, and truthfully, I think she diagnosed it quicker than most people could have. I think most people probably would have told me to take some time off and get back, and I wonder if I wouldn't have figured out what was going on until well into the new year, so I'm very thankful that she was able to help me figure this out so quickly. But she immediately said, Meghann, she looked me dead in the eyes, and she was like, you need to rest. Like, you need to shut this down, right? Like, do not walk too much. Do not run, even before we knew what it was, just because she suspected it. So I got immediately very scared of like, what can I do? I shouldn't do anything. I need to be like completely immobile. So then I was talking to, a different physician, and he actually told me being completely immobile and doing nothing is as bad for bone healing as doing too much. So you want to find that sweet spot in the middle where you're getting good blood flow to that area without stressing that bone injury anymore. So I was told, like, as long as you're not in pain, swimming, biking, any type of just kind of moderate activity. So not trying to maintain fitness while I'm off or anything like that, but just trying to stay active for mental health, for bone health, all that kind of stuff. So it was super helpful for me to hear that, to be like, okay, this is okay that I'm still swimming and biking and moving as long as I'm not having pain, and that in my mind, that's actually helping with the healing process. But that is a really tricky spot to be in, like I can't do what I love, running, which is completely okay. I know my body needs that time to heal, but it's like, what do I do without doing too much? Like it leaves you kind of in this like little bit of a strange spot.
Why does an NSAID, why is it bad? Why is it bad for bone healing?
So,
It
blocks different pathways in our body that would promote inflammation, and that inflammation actually does help heal, right? So like we're blocking some of our body's natural response to try to heal an area. I'm sure there's a much better explanation for that, but I think that's a good, just kind of basic one. And you don't necessarily want to block that, right? And I'm sure there's something that specifically interacts with the bone process of rebuilding that as well.
So you're doing this like balancing act of movement and not overdoing it and stressing out more, which I'm sure in itself is probably a challenge. But what else can you do outside of like the physical activities, whether it's nutrition or otherwise? What else can you do?
So that was an interesting conversation I had with a physician recently. And he said there's things we can do to speed up bone healing, but it doesn't necessarily improve the integrity of that bone. So he said, like right now with our research, like you could do shockwave therapy, which will help you like lay down some bone and like speed up that healing. But he said like bone needs time to heal. So by speeding that up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like stronger, right? It just means that it still has work to do, and maybe we might jump back too soon, right? So he was a little bossy with me, and very much I said something about doing a summer half Ironman, and he's like, I'll tell you if you can do a summer half Ironman. I was like, whoa, okay, thank you. I mean, he was great. Like, I'm making that sound dramatic, but part of me was like, good, I need somebody to tell me not to do something. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I need somebody to be like, do not run a spring race. Do not try to get back, because I think we're all like, but I could do this or I could do that. And that's just part of our
I do feel like
minds.
The medical profession, in my experience, has been a little conservative, especially when it comes to exercise. And their answer is always to pull back. Yeah. So I think it is tough. You do kind of have to. This is where I think really getting a good idea and understanding your body and the messages it's sending you is really important. And it is like our brain is going to be like, yeah, I know that if Meg takes a week off, I'm not going to have a good time around the house. Like, it's not going to be a good place for me to be. So even though she's going to want to start back exercising, I'm also like, yeah, give it a shot. See if that works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I've had some time to reflect on this, and I'm so thankful for what my body has accomplished over the last 3 years. Like, the things that it's accomplished, I honestly cannot believe. I look at some of these things I've done. I'm like, how did you do that? Like, I'm so thankful for everything that it did, that at this point, like, I'm going to try not to cry. The fact that it broke, I'm like, I need to respect that. Like, I need to respect the fact that, like, this body has done a shit ton for me, and it needs a break, and it, like, told you loud and clear, right? Yeah. Loud and clear that it needed a break. So I am 100% in on whatever this body needs to heal. If that's 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, if it's a full year, like, I'll be back. I'll be back, and I'll be back stronger. But, I'm not going to be one of those people who's like on the elliptical for 3 hours, maintaining fitness so that I can hop back and run. Like, that's just not going to be, I respect the hell out of my body enough that this scared the crap out of me, right? That something went this wrong with something that I love to do so much, that I don't want to respect it. I want to respect the healing process and, do what I have to do to get back.
You bring up a good point, though, here. There's two parts to an injury. There's the physical aspect, and there's the mental aspect. And I think that our bodies are going to heal, and they'll take care of themselves if you take care of them.
Right.
But the mental thing, I think, is so much harder in what we do. And to a certain degree, our professions rely on us to be active. So right now, with the mental side probably being really big in, like, a weight, I know that you talked to our friend Emily Saul. Mm-hmm. How are you working through the mental stuff, and can you kind of give like a time frame of first, second, and like kind of like, how they have the acceptance and
denial.
Where am I?
All that stuff. Yeah, did you go through all those things? And
probably.
And where are you now?
I mean, total denial, thinking this was a disc, and I've been told it's actually better that it's not a disc. But I don't know if I'm on that train quite yet. But I mean, total denial. Like this, I was going to wake up one morning, my disc was going to be fine. I was going to keep running. Like, total denial, right? And I think it's our love of the sport and our love to continue to do what makes us feel great that, like, puts us in that denial. But, I guess to be completely transparent, like, especially at the beginning, like, I didn't feel like myself without running. And I think we can all relate to that. Like, running makes us feel a certain way. It starts our day a certain way. Like, when we are truly ingrained in a routine with running, like, things just feel off without it, right? So that was probably the initial thing that I felt, is just like that this was off. But like I said, I've been very, I don't know what the right word is. I think maybe because I am older, like, if this would have happened 5 years ago, I would have been in a very different space mentally. But like I said, like, I think I'm just so thankful for everything that I've accomplished. And I truly believe I will continue to accomplish more, but I just need a break right now. So having that consistent thought in my head of, like, Meghann, you need to respect your body, to your point, like, you guys' running is probably a little more ingrained in what you do in your career. Like, I can still do my career without running. I don't want to, but, like, I can still work with runners. I have the experience. Even if I never ran another step, I think I still could do what I do.
For
that
sure.
Won't happen. But, so, like, having that and understanding that. And then two, I think I'm learning a lot through this process. I have a ton of athletes that come to me with bone stress injuries, because there's a huge connection of nutrition to bone stress injuries. So I've worked with so many people. Some of the people I'm working with right now don't even realize this is going on in the background, because I don't want to make it about me, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to learn some things through here so I can help other people more. And two, I think every time we experience something in life, we have a greater appreciation of how to support others going through that type of experience. So I'm trying to, like, be like, okay, we're growing here as a human from this really shitty thing that happened. And, I think you mentioned Emily Saul. The biggest thing, that was hard for me with this injury is, like I said, and we'll talk through, some of the things that I checked the boxes on to make sure that that wasn't a piece of why I got this injury. And as we checked those boxes and we're like, no, like, none of this is adding up, my good friend that diagnosed this, was like, there's too much stress in your life. There's excess stress somewhere, Meghann, that is like coming out as this injury, right? Like I said, being a mom, running this business, traveling a lot, all this stuff. So I think for me, talking to Emily Saul was like, okay, this is my life, and I like to be busy. I like to have a lot on my plate. I've perceived this type of stress as good stress, but obviously my body doesn't. So kind of working through that with Emily to try to figure out, like, how do I either perceive stress in a different way, or do I need to decrease certain stressors, or, and I don't have the answers for those yet, but I do truly believe that this was less about running stress and more about total life stress, right? That kind of culminated in just the running being too much. So yeah, I guess I don't have an answer for that, but anybody who is going through this, I just really encourage them to go and find somebody to talk to. That was the first thing that, Allison said to me when she gave me this diagnosis, was like, do you have someone to talk to about this? Like, I think all of us know as runners that, like, it takes a huge mental hit when we can't have that running hit,
Yeah.
So, I really appreciated that she understood the importance of that.
Yeah, for me, the running on a daily basis, it kind of squeezes the evil out. Like there's
Right?
this like fog or something that's inside of me in the morning, and when I go for a run, I come back. The other day I was like annoyed, and I left. I was like, I just need to run, so I went out and I ran. And I came back and I was fine. But
You're
yeah,
okay?
so that outlet is huge in finding another place for it. Now you talk a lot about, you work with people that are having bone issues due to nutrition, and you pride yourself in understanding nutrition and having that. Were you afraid, or was there any thought in your head that you had somehow failed yourself, and then sort of like, how would the people that you're working with perceive you when you're having a issue with bone?
I hadn't had that thought until someone told me that. Someone told me the optics of a sports dietitian having a bone injury is not good for your business. I had someone specifically say that to me.
What?
And I honestly had not gone there until I heard that. And I was like, oh, crap. Well, now that's in my head. But
was that person a professional?
In the space, but not a nutrition professional. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So, of course, I probably take to heart what others say more than you would notice from the outside. So like that kind of stuck in my head and resonated for a while, especially when you can't run and can't like have your stress relief,
Yeah.
So, and two, I don't want to be negligent. Like, if there was something I was doing with my nutrition and I didn't realize that I was undercutting or shortchanging myself somewhere, I would be the first one to be like, okay, I think I actually need to change X, Y, or Z. I even sat down with another professional to talk through my nutrition to see, like, do you see any glaring pieces? Like, this is how I did, like, especially now not exercising as much and seeing how my nutrition has changed. I'm like, Meghann, you were eating plenty. Like, there, the timing was there. The scalability was there. The fueling, during runs was there. So, in my heart, I truly don't believe that nutrition was a piece of it. And like I said, I've sat down and kind of hashed that through with other people. So I think I'm at peace with, if someone wants to perceive this situation that way, then that's something I can't change, but
it is funny, like how many people, because we get to spend a lot of time with you in the public, certainly when we've been in New York or something, how many people are come up and are appreciative of the advice, and they tell you how you changed their running, changed their life through nutrition, and how it improved everything. You hear that, when I'm with you, I hear that maybe, 50 times a day, as people come up and want to meet you, take a selfie, whatever, who are followers on Instagram or wherever you are. And then you get one comment,
right?
And
that's the one that
somebody
sticks.
saying, hey, you're a piece of shit. And you're like, yeah,
I know.
That's the one I'm going to pay attention to. Like, like when you're dealing with like, talking to Emily, and we didn't really say, Emily Saul is a sports therapist. So, somebody that I've used when I've been injured. When 2023, I was going through an injury, and it was just destroying my head. And so a couple of bad races and stuff like that, but she's fantastic. Have you talked to her any about that? Like that you get so much praise and so many people you've helped and what you've done for the community and all the free things that you do for the community. But then somebody can say something kind of offhanded, or you read a post where somebody questions your integrity or your professionalism. Have you talked to her at all about that?
She actually said, and it stuck with me, she was like, do you pause to appreciate all the folks that appreciate you? Like, do you pause to like take in those moments? Like you were saying, like when we go places and people are like excited to be like how much the PRs or how much things have changed and how you've changed my mentality about nutrition and all that kind of stuff. And, I was like, sometimes question mark, AKA I don't enough, like I probably don't like allow myself to take that back seat and just sit there and kind of soak it in. I feel like I'm such a go person, like point A to point B to point C, So yeah, I mean, she was talking about that, and not necessarily like to drown out the negative stuff. We were just talking about like just being more appreciative of, all the good that comes in these circumstances, just as a way to like decrease that stress response, right? Like I was just talking about, like, being a little more appreciative and in the moment, to kind of help things not appear so stressful. Yeah.
And I notice it as being a father, that when I see a good thing happening to my child, I glow about it. I'm excited about it. I'm proud of him. It's amazing. If anybody said anything negative about him, I wouldn't even register it because I know him. I'm like, that's a good kid and he's doing good stuff. I noticed that about myself, and I said, why do I do the opposite for myself?
Mm-hmm. It's hard not to, but I don't know about you guys, but like I've always wanted to help others, and I've always wanted to do that through nutrition. I think that's very obvious from all the resources we give for free, from here to the website to anywhere to in person, all that kind of stuff. But I never actually wanted to be Meghann, an influencer, right? Like that was nothing I wanted my knowledge to help people, right? So all of a sudden we're in this position where we kind of are, like people are kind of also intrigued by us. And then something like this happens, and I just want to just go into a cave and not talk about it, which is why it is now 8 weeks past the stress fracture and I'm just talking about it. Like that's just my MO, right? Like I'm just like, I don't want to talk about it. But I realized that because of what we've built here, that like, yes, it needs to be discussed. And quite frankly, like that's probably a shortcoming of mine, to not reach out to people, to want to talk about things, to get help. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I'm reaching out.
Well, I think it's going to actually help people too.
I do too.
But also,
I do too. It's just like how I am.
Meghann, it's not like you curled into a cave and you're like, I'm not talking to anyone. Like you've been seeing all these specialists to make sure when you did talk about this injury, you had all of the specifics and all the answers so that you could say very eloquently, this is what it was, this is what it wasn't.
Right.
Look at Meg dropping the eloquently.
Well, no, she's right, because you guys were like, hey, you want to talk about this? And I was like, I have a few more tests that need done. Like, I want to make sure I have like all my ducks in a row, which is, again, just kind of how I function. But I do, if anyone, I know, like I said, I took this poll on Instagram, and I actually was fairly defeated by the number of people that were like, why don't you have a both button? I've had a bone injury and a soft tissue injury this year. And I'm like, like, it's just heartbreaking, because I know how hard it is to be injured. And even before this, I've had like Achilles stuff. So I've had like, so I, it's not like this is the first time I've been sidelined.
Yeah, you used to wear calf sleeves all the time.
I know, it's been a while, but I guess I want to make sure we do diligence to like make sure that people feel supported if they are injured, and know that, like you could reach out if you have a similar injury or you need something. But then also, like, if you are diagnosed, we'll specifically talk about a bone injury first. Like if you find out you have a bone injury, whether it's a stress reaction, a full bone stress fracture, or even if it's like an accident and you break something and you want to get back to running, right? Like any of those three circumstances, the first thing we want to do is get blood work. So immediately got my inside tracker done to see like, is anything off? And the main thing that we're looking for is vitamin D, because if vitamin D is low, we don't absorb as much calcium through our diet, which that low serum vitamin D, less calcium absorption in our diet is going to delay bone healing. Like there's just concrete literature to show, like if our vitamin D isn't where it's supposed to be, it's going to take longer to heal a bone injury. Also, if our vitamin D is chronically low, it's going to increase our risk of getting a bone injury or another bone injury. So that was the first thing I did, is get blood work done. We want our vitamin D well over 30. If it's under 30, that's when our risk is increased or we're not healing as well. Mine was 34. So I started 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, not in the danger zone, but definitely could be better, right? Especially looking at how to heal. I don't think that was a reason that this happened. I don't think it was that low, but definitely, needed to increase that a little bit. So started on that vitamin D.
Are you
The
taking
other
calcium
thing,
as well?
so yeah, there's research to show we need adequate calcium. So what I did was, getting calcium through diet is actually better for bone healing than supplements. So rather than just immediately throwing a supplement at it, which if someone has like a dairy intolerance or just doesn't consume much calcium, then yes, by any means, let's add a calcium supplement in there. But I eat a ton of dairy, a ton. So I actually sat down the first 2 days after, I was looking into all this and calculated like how many gram or milligrams of calcium am I getting a day? And I was like way over like the recommendation. So I in
So
my mind, I'm like,
where do you get your calcium from? Give me when you say you eat a
so
lot of
those
dairy.
Fairlife 30-gram protein shakes that I drink every morning are fortified with calcium. So technically, I guess it's kind of almost like a supplement. But those had like 700 some milligrams. And then I always eat at least one Greek yogurt, maybe two. And I have like 2 cheese sticks most days as a snack. And then, something like tofu at dinner, or, obviously that changes a little bit. But
Tofu has calcium?
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
there's all sorts of places, but yeah, I did buy like the Viactive calcium chew because I was like, maybe I'm going to need it. And then as I really looked at it, I like sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, you didn't quite get enough dairy. So I'll like take one, but most of the time I'm just getting it through diet. But that's a good thing to assess as well, is just making sure that you're getting that calcium, because we can't really store calcium in our body. So if we're not getting enough to restore that bone health, we're going to be taking it from somewhere else, which is a bone. Right. So, it's definitely important to make sure we're getting enough. The other thing was interesting was the two, actually three, and a physical therapist that I've been to, we're looking at like the physical assessment, right? So sometimes stress fractures could have nothing to do with anything but like gait, or one of your legs is longer, or you changed shoes or something like that, right? So looking at like, how does your body move? So one of the guys was like totally assessing me. And for whatever reason, my right calf and my right quad are significantly smaller than my left, but it's stronger. It's been like this since I had kids. No one can seem to figure it out. So he assessed me and was expecting it to be wonky, like my angles. And he was like, I'm shocked, but he's like, everything's fine with you. Like your symmetry is fine. He was like, I didn't think this is what, so he was basically saying, and then my PT said the same thing, like your body's moving fine. Like, I'm not sure it could be like a gait, because obviously I can't run and have a gait analysis now. So it could be something with that, but down the line, we'll look at that too. But nothing, blaring there. Now, my physical therapist did say my glute medials were very weak, which I already knew that, which is like that muscle that runs from your sacrum down around, like on top of your butt, from your sacrum down around to almost like the sides of your hips, femur type area, if you will. So I said, I'm like, if those were this weak and I was running this much, could that have put undue force or stress on the sacrum? He's like, sure. Yeah, it might. So again, who knows if that was it, but certainly strengthening the glute medials at this point. So I say all of that, make sure you've got a team of people to assess your body, how it moves, where the weaknesses are, just making sure that, in downtime, I can do things to strengthen that right now, right? Like, it's not like I can't do anything in that area. Like, I can work on some things. So mentally, it's nice to be like, okay, I'm strengthening these muscles. So when I come back, this will be better. So make sure you have that team. We talked about psychological assessment, right? Making sure, like, for me personally, it's the stressors in my life and how I perceive them and how I let them ruminate in my mind and my body and all that kind of stuff. So, obviously that's going to be different for everybody, but just making sure you have somebody to talk through anything that could have been a piece of this injury. The next thing was bone health. So one of my doctors said, you get one bone stress injury for free. And then the second one, you have to get a bone scan to see if your bone density is okay. So I was like, okay, all right. She doesn't want me to get one quite yet. Well, over Thanksgiving, I'm talking, and like both sides of my family have terrible histories of premature osteopenia, which means in women, their bones start to lose density before menopause. So that's like a big concern for this, right? So I got a DEXA ordered, which will look at like the integrity of your bone to see if it's as strong as it should be for your age, right? So 2 of my doctors were expecting this to be really bad, given my family history, even though I'm a runner, and it came back and it's phenomenal. So that's wonderful to see that, I don't have like anything that could potentially cause this to happen again, or things that I need to be concerned about, because there are like medications you can go on to help with bone density if you have like early bone loss things. So that's not an issue. But for a lot of the people I work with that come to me with recurrent stress fractures, that is a problem. And usually bone density is low in people who've had a history of an eating disorder. So like if in those peak years of bone development, we weren't eating enough, we were under fueling, I see a lot of that in someone's history that does have low bone density at a young age. So if that's, people listening that maybe you're in a similar situation, that's definitely something to push for. I did have to push a little bit to get my insurance company to approve it, but I don't know about anybody else, but I don't want this to happen again. So like if I can figure out everything I need to know now, I would
also just for
push that.
your mental sake, so you
Right.
can again like check that box and make sure you
Right.
know that's fine. So if someone did suffer from disordered eating of some kind and earlier in their life and they're fine now, but their bone density is low, can they fix it at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot we can do. Obviously running improves it. Strength training improves it a ton. Eating enough, getting vitamin D up, eating enough calcium, all those things. I've seen bone density improve for women. It's really cool to see what good nutrition,
That's awesome.
Solid training, all that kind of stuff can do to help. For sure. So, that's definitely something to look at. When we really look at the research, there's a huge connection, as I said, with like low energy availability or like red S and these bone injuries. Like I said, sat down, I really don't think that was a piece specifically for me, but that is a piece for a lot of people, right? Just inadvertently, maybe we're not eating enough, or maybe it is like an intentional thing and we need to pay attention to some disordered eating habits. But that's certainly not something we want to overlook with any bone stress injury. I have a ton of people who come to me with the diagnosis of a bone stress injury, no matter where it is in their body, to assess, is my nutrition okay? Right. And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So, it's just, I think that's a good thing to check that box as well and just make sure that we're, doing everything we need to do there, from that perspective. So those are kind of some of the things that I specifically worked through that hopefully will help somebody else if unfortunately they're in, a similar spot.
Yeah, I think that's all super helpful to someone. And I'm hoping, because I can see someone being recently diagnosed with an injury and just not wanting to think about it or deal with it or even like listen to a podcast like this. I'm hoping that it reaches those people, because I feel like this is...
I think it's the opposite. I think when I have an injury, I'm like, I want anything that will help me
to fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I'm hoping.
I won't listen to it if I don't have an injury because I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
It's like bad juju.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, even though like just knowing how to prevent an injury, right? Like all of these things, like I said, a huge risk for bone injuries in females is amenorrhea, where they're not getting their period, right? So like if somebody's listening and they're like, I've never been injured, but I haven't had a period in 6 months, let's do something about it before we get injured. Well, injured. Thomas. But that type of stuff, right? Like, let's not wait till something breaks to fix it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't even think we're going to get to any questions here because we're already at an hour mark here, but I feel like this was super helpful for someone who may be going through an injury right now. What would you say are your takeaways? Like, what are you the most grateful that you did in order to figure this out and check all the boxes? And then like, what are you doing right now to just kind of help with your mental health?
Yeah, I think finding the people that can help you get the answers you need, or if you don't know the answers you need, like luckily with the space I'm in, I knew exactly what I needed to figure out to make sure I knew what was happening here. Make sure you reach out to somebody that can help you, right? And you don't have to do it all alone. The doctor that diagnosed me is phenomenal, but there's also another phenomenal doctor that I wanted to talk to too, so like get multiple opinions if you want to. Find a good physical therapist, push for that DEXA scan, get your blood work, do the things so that you can feel like you have like an ounce of control in this situation, and so that you can understand if there were factors that are actionable for what might have caused this, right? For me, I just need to rest more and not be quite so crazy with all my running and life.
Well, also find a way to get rid of some of your stress.
Yeah. Right. Right. And two, maybe it's just how I perceive it. Maybe it's not even that it's too much stress. Maybe it's how my body deals with it. Right. So like even like the whole Emily Saul stuff, like the mental piece of this all is just as important as the physical. And I didn't talk a ton about life without running, which I think is the scariest thing for most people. And maybe it's because I've had 8 weeks to process this and come to a spot where it gets easier, I guess is what I want to say. Like if running was taken away for you for some reason in your life, like the hardest part is the beginning. The hardest part is when it's immediately taken away, and it's almost like that withdrawal, if you will. And I would, talk to your team, your doctors about what is okay from a movement perspective, because as I learned in this, which was actually kind of shocked, like not moving is not helpful, right? So it's finding what type of movement your body can do. I hate swimming, but I'm starting to like it because that's what I can do, and that's how I can move my body, and my core is getting stronger. My arms are getting stronger. So it's like focusing on some of the positives from this and the things that you could potentially gain by taking a step back from the running focus and get stronger, right? Get a stronger butt, heal my broken butt, like all that kind of stuff. So, it sucks. I don't want, my positive outlook right now to, minimize anyone's feelings if they're feeling very like this is a really shitty situation, because it is. It sucks when running is taken away from us, but it doesn't mean it's gone forever. And, there's a lot we can do in the meantime.
Not to draw this out longer, but I think another part of running isn't just the emotional, like your daily routine. But what was hard for me when I was injured is I want to be running with Meghann, or I want to be running with the Faster Bastards, or I want to be running with my friends. And you see everybody else, especially with Instagram and stuff, you see people doing stuff and you're like, I can't participate. And you're all of a sudden shut out of like a life that you've built. Like for me, there's a lot of my life that revolves around friendships and everything, where when you're not running, you're out. Yeah.
And that's why I feel honestly very, very lucky. Like if I could pick a time for this to happen, it would have been now. I had an amazing Berlin. I felt amazing in Berlin. It sucks that I couldn't run New York, but no one wants to run in this 30-degree sleet and snow in Ohio. Like now's the time to get better.
I have to tell you, Meghann, I have been so unmotivated to run recently, and I'm not doing any like hard workouts. I'm just doing some base mileage to keep like a normal amount of running in my life. And every time where I'm like, I don't want to get out the door because it's cold or something, I'm like, I can. I am not injured. I can go out and run. And so your injury, while it sucks, has also made me rethink about running in general in a positive way. So
yeah. And this is the hardest time.
There's positives to all of it.
There is. Yeah. There is. Yeah. And I'll be back. And thank you for those who gave me space and didn't, what's going on? What's going on? Why is your Strava blank? Thank you for people who gave me some space through there. But as you all know, I'm ready to talk about it. So if anybody needs to chat now, I'm here.
All right. Yeah. And thank you for sharing all of that, because I know, like you said, it's not what you want to be talking about, but it is what we're talking about. So we appreciate it.
Yeah. Definitely. We'll do some more on injuries. We have some questions to answer, so we'll chat a little more about it here in this new year.
I'm sure we'll get more questions after this episode.
Yeah.
Is it time?
Do it.
Peas and carrots.
Bye.
Okay, do it. It's fine. I edit these. It's fine.
Get this together. My brain is not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
You know what? You don't want to snap bones, but you know what you do want to snap?
What?
Peas.
Oh, wow.
Really bringing that back.
Yeah, and carrots.